A foiled coup attempt in Haiti. Haitian authorities on Sunday thwarted an attempted coup targeting disputed President Jovenel Moïse, the Justice Minister announced. This coup attempt, according to the expression of the Minister of Justice Rockefeller Vincent, involves a judge of the Court of Cassation and an official of the Haitian National Police, for his part clarified Joseph Jouthe, the Prime Minister of the country in crisis. The President says having escaped a murder attempt. Haitian President Jovenel Moïse, hotly contested in the country in crisis, announced on Sunday that he had escaped an assassination attempt, with authorities making around 20 arrests. "I thank the person in charge of my security at the palace. The dream of these people was to make an attempt on my life. Thank God, we haven't seen that. This plan was aborted," said Moïse. The Haitian head of state was speaking on the tarmac at Port-au-Prince Airport, surrounded by his wife and Prime Minister Joseph Jouthe, whom he instructed to give later all the details, without filter. 23 people were arrested, including a judge from the Court of Cassation and a general inspector of the National Police, Joseph Jouthe then told the press. Haiti, in the midst of a legitimacy crisis, the government wants to reform political life. Haitian authorities released a draft new constitution on Wednesday in the hope of breaking the political blockages that are paralyzing the country, a text that would strengthen the powers of the executive at a time when President Jovenel Moïse is in the hot seat. A constitutional referendum is scheduled for April 25 for approval of the text by the people. Its implementation would disrupt the country's political scene with the abolition of the Senate and that of the post of Prime Minister, replaced by a vice president elected at the same time as the president, in a single-round vote instead of two today. The goal of such reform for the president, to limit political paralysis with each change of cabinet. The approval of the Prime Minister's general policy by the legislative power has in fact always been the subject of long negotiations with parliamentarians, and consequent blockages. The current constitution, adopted in 1987 after 3 decades of dictatorship by father and son Duvalier, is criticized from all sides for its rigidity. But the timing chosen by Jovenel Moïse to engage the country in this political turn is not optimal in view of the growing criticism against him. The political opposition and a growing number of civil society organizations consider that the head of state's mandate ends on Sunday, which President Moïse disputes. UN logistical support. In Haiti, the presidential term lasts 5 years and begins on February 7 following the elections. Jovenel Moïse had been announced elected in the first round of the presidential election held in October 2015, but this ballot had been cancelled due to fraud. Declared the winner in the second round of the reorganized election a year later, Mr. Moïse was finally sworn in on February 7, 2017. His supporters therefore believe that his term did not begin until that date and that it will end on February 7, 2022. But the opposition considers that the mandate comes to an end on February 7. And the country's Catholic clergy has now joined the list of civil society entities to declare themselves against the maintenance in power of Jovenel Moïse beyond Sunday. Asked by the Haitian authorities, the United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti, BINU, for its part, simply confirmed providing technical, operational, and logistical support to future elections, without specifying whether it was referring to the presidential election, legislative, or referendum. In a statement released at the end of January, BINU refers to the Provisional Electoral Council for the timing. Some voices protest against this response from the UN. Does the UN understand that elections cannot be organized in this context of total insecurity? Indignant the Haitian sociologist Lionel Herbin. Does the UN understand what is at stake in the various protests against kidnappings and gangs? He insists. Vegetate in the provisional. Since the fall, Haiti has witnessed an upsurge in kidnappings for ransom that indiscriminately affect the richest inhabitants, and the majority living below the poverty line. Several peaceful demonstrations organized since June 2020 to denounce this insecurity have been forcefully repressed by the Haitian National Police. Faced with these security and political tensions, the draft constitutional referendum has stirred up criticism even in Jovenel Moïse's camp because the chosen procedure does not seem to respect the provisions of the current constitution. The text dating from 1987 declares that any popular consultation aimed at modifying the constitution by referendum is strictly prohibited. Focusing the attention of reformers today, the country's basic law is talked about as often as it is violated by Haitian politicians. The Constitutional Council, which should have decided on the length of the presidential mandate, only exists on paper, for example, as does the Permanent Electoral Council. For more than 3 decades, each president has illegally drawn up provisional electoral councils. People who come to power fail to go beyond themselves to promote the public interest. The general interest, everyone tries to make laws tailored to meet their own needs, denounces the president of the Federation of Haitian Bars, Jacques Latong. This is what makes us continue to vegetate in the provisional more than 30 years after the end of the dictatorship, concludes the lawyer,